Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening from. My name is Eric, and this is the Five Head Podcast. Welcome to the 7th episode of the Five Head Podcast. In this episode, we're going to dive into two things. First, we're going to talk about the church school shooting in Minneapolis and use that to dive into the gun debate. Then I'm going to dive into why Gavin Newsome is going to be president in 2029. But before we get into those things, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, check out episodes 1 through 6 on Spotify and Buzzsprout at Five Head Podcast or on YouTube at Middleview Media. And for everyone listening to this episode right now, please go ahead and hit that like button, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps a brother out. Now, as we get into this gun debate, please understand that whatever side you're on when it comes to guns, I'm going to upset you because I like looking at both sides of every argument and bringing up legit points made on both sides of every argument. However, if you've listened to any of my episodes before or the pre-episode I did in the very beginning, I've always tried to explain that I have my own personal views on these things, and those views, depending on who's listening, are going to align to the general left or the general right, depending on the topic. And if you're new to listening to any of my episodes, I just want you to understand that when I have a personal view, I understand that some people don't share that view, and that's okay. I'm not trying to convince anyone to change their views or to see things the way that I do. I'm just sharing what my personal views are, but that doesn't mean that I'm not able to understand the opposing view. And more importantly, I don't think that something should be a rule or a law simply because that's how I feel. I perfectly understand that a lot of people don't feel that way. And so maybe we need to find somewhere in the middle to make a law that can work for the majority of people across the board. So let's get into this. Earlier this week in Minneapolis, there was another mass shooting. This one was at a church school where 2 kids were killed initially and a few others were sent to the hospital. And right on cue, just like what happens with every mass shooting or every school shooting over the last 10, 15 years, this propels everyone right into the same old tired gun debates that we seem to have. And it couldn't be more of an opposing view between the two sides of this gun debate. The idea that weapons should be removed from society, at least certain types of weapons, generally aligns with the left, and the view that we have a right to bear arms regardless of the weapon is generally held by the people on the right. So personally, when it comes to this topic, I can see the argument that nobody needs a, quote, military style, quote, weapon, generally referring to an AR-15 or some sort of automatic or semi-automatic rifle. In my day-to-day life, just going from waking up and going to work and all my kids' extracurricular and just living my life, I've never once had the need for an AR-15. At the same time, I also feel the right for the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, I get the difference in this situation is that a gun is a killing machine. It's meant to kill. It's not like, anyone should be able to own whatever they want as long as they're being responsible with it, like a skateboard, because guns are made for one reason, and that's to shoot bullets. But the principle in my mind still stands. And in general, I have the view, the principle of punishing the crime, not the freedom. So, for example, that I like to use is alcohol. You can make arguments, legit arguments, to why alcohol should just be banned across the board. When you think about it, there is absolutely no redeeming quality of alcohol. It serves no benefit on the individual level, and it serves no benefit on the societal level. It's not like, did you hear Timmy cured cancer? Oh, what happened? Oh, well, he got drunk the other night and cured cancer, right? There's nothing good with alcohol at all. On an individual level, nothing but poison to your body. And on a societal level, there's no benefit to alcohol either, right? How many times do you hear there was a fight at this restaurant and the guy was drunk? Or there was a domestic incident between a husband and wife, and of course, the husband was drunk. Or there's a car accident where 3 people died and the driver was like, anything you hear about alcohol is actually based around something negative or terrible that happened where alcohol was part of the mix. So just given that alone, when you talk about individual safety and the safety of all of society put together, you can make a legit argument that we should just ban alcohol. Why do we even have alcohol? What is the point of it? But then there's a simple principle. We should be allowed to have alcohol because if someone enjoys drinking alcohol and they do so responsibly, it's none of your business. Yes, alcohol is absolutely terrible if someone gets drunk and beats their wife, if someone gets drunk and assaults someone else, if someone gets drunk and gets behind the wheel of a car and gets in an accident and injures someone else. But when those things happen, we don't say ban alcohol. We say punish the person who used alcohol irresponsibly. But don't take the ability for other people to enjoy alcohol across the board. And that's the same way I feel about anything, including gun ownership. So that's just my personal view in general. Punish the crime, not the freedom. However, when these things happen, the initial response is usually from people who hate guns and want them or certain types of guns removed from society. And again, it's a legit argument to make. Who needs an AR-15? I get it. And I also get, though, that there's some people who would come on this podcast and give me a 30-minute argument on why they need their AR-15. But I'm just saying from a debate standpoint, as soon as these things happen, that's the first thing you hear. We need more comprehensive gun legislations. We need to ban AR-15s. We need to ban, quote, quote, assault rifles. No one but the military should have those. But the other thing that's kind of been an argument lately, and it's kind of a straw man argument, is when people say thoughts and prayers aren't working. And it's really been highlighted now in this incident because this happens to be at a church. And people are using the fact that these kids were literally praying when they got shot as more fuel to the fire to say, your thoughts and prayers solution isn't working. Therefore, we need to just ban these weapons. But that's a straw man argument to me. See, thoughts and prayers aren't used as a solution to mass shootings. No one is saying, oh my gosh, there was another mass shooting. You know what'll stop all mass shootings from happening? Let me give my thoughts and prayers. So it's argued against as an unworking solution, but no one said it was a solution. When people offer their thoughts and prayers, all they're doing is saying that in this tragedy, I'm thinking about you. And if they're religious, that they're praying for you. It's an endearing thing. It's not a solution to the gun problem. But nonetheless, politicians will get on TV and use a straw man. Thoughts and prayers don't work. We need comprehensive gun reform and we need more gun legislation. But I'm sorry to say this, but your gun legislation is stopping these mass shootings just as much as thoughts and prayers are. I would go as far to say that people who immediately stand on the backs of dead children and jump to, when we need more laws and more gun regulations, are doing less to solve the problem than anyone else is. It offers less of a solution than even thoughts and prayers. At least thoughts and prayers are kind of revolving around this general idea that there's more to life than just us. It's bigger than us. And there's a reason for being morally good. Maybe giving thoughts and giving prayers can actually get through to someone who have these thoughts of mass murder. And who knows? I'm just saying, as much as they claim thoughts and prayers do nothing, getting in front of a TV and screaming that we need more gun laws does just as much as nothing to stop the next mass shooting from happening. And quite frankly, so do the gun laws themselves. In many of these places that these mass shootings occur, like schools, guns are already not allowed. So the shooter violated those gun laws to commit these murders. In fact, believe it or not, murder is not allowed. Walking into a school and shooting a bunch of children is already banned. We already have comprehensive murder laws, but the bans on murder obviously didn't protect these children. So to stand up there and say we need more laws is doing nothing. We constantly put out more laws on the local, state, and even federal level, and it does nothing to stop these shootings. But then that's some people's only answer to the next shooting. Let's continue to do more of the stuff that doesn't work. That's the solution. And what gets me about this is people who the only thing they'll say is we need more better gun laws, and that's what will stop this, even though we just had new gun laws passed and it still hasn't stopped it. They're unwilling to hear any other way of solving the mass shooting problem. So it's like, how often are we going to continue to do the same thing and expect a different result? So back in 2022, Congress passed what they called the most comprehensive gun control laws in decades. The White House signed off on it, and then they all bragged that this was going to save thousands of lives. And in the 3 years since 2022, there have been more mass and school shootings than there have been in any 3-year period in the history of our country. So what thousands of lives were saved from these this most comprehensive gun legislation in 30 years. It didn't work. States ban guns, gun violence. Cities, municipalities ban guns, gun violence. Schools ban guns on property, school shootings. States ban guns in public parks, public park shootings. So how much longer are we going to continue to do the same thing, which is pass more gun laws, and expect a different result? That's why I say it's the biggest, quote, quote, thoughts and prayers that there is. Stand on the backs of dead children, say we need more gun laws, use them as a platform to promote your more gun laws, get those gun laws passed in your local city or your state legislature or on a national level, celebrate those and pat yourself on the back for those gun laws being passed, all while watching the next mass shooting happen because those gun laws didn't stop them at all. If gun control legislation works, how come it doesn't work? And why are you unwilling to entertain any other ideas for stopping these mass shootings? I know what you're thinking. If you're saying people that promote more gun laws are unwilling to hear any other solution, what other solution do you have in mind? Well, when it comes to keeping the children safe, if that is the goal, especially when it comes to school shootings where children are sitting ducks, maybe we need to secure the schools. Maybe we need to have armed security at the school. I don't understand why someone would be against that. And I've heard the arguments against it, right? Our schools are not supposed to look like a jail when the kids walk in. How are they going to be able to learn when it looks like they're walking into a security facility? It doesn't have to look like a jail or feel like a jail. And that doesn't make any sense. We have armed security at banks. Does walking into a bank make you feel like you're walking into a jail? We have armed security at sporting events. When you go to a football game, does it feel like you're walking into a jail? No, we have armed security at office buildings where I work. Does it feel like I'm walking into a jail? No. And quite frankly, would you rather your child come home and say, it almost feels like I'm walking into a jail when I go to school because of the armed security? Or would you rather them come home and say, I felt like I walk into a battlefield because of all the dead classmates I have laying around me? What is the goal here? I'm all for the idea of securing schools. It's not that difficult to do. They just need something to be the first line of defense because our children are sitting ducks. There's nowhere for them to go. There's nowhere for them to hide. There's no one there to even try to stop a shooter from doing something. Even if it was just a slight chance for someone to stop the shooter before they had a chance to kill a bunch of kids, it would be worth it. You don't need an entire police force there. Most schools have their doors locked, right? So when I walk up to my kid's school, I have to press a little buzzer, and the office says, "What are you here for?" "I'm here to pick up my son for a doctor's appointment," or whatever the case. And then they buzz you in. And then your first stop is supposed to be into the administration's office. Well, right where you get buzzed in, if there is a desk out in that hallway with a concealed carried security guard sitting there, that's your first line of defense. Someone comes walking up to the front of the school holding an AR-15, that guy can see that before they even get to those doors to press the buzzer to try to get people to even unlock the door to let them in. And he has a chance to take that shooter out before that shooter has a chance to kill a bunch of children. It doesn't have to be complicated. So you're saying the solution is to bring more guns into school. Yes, to stop a shooter, the solution is to bring more guns into school. When there is a school shooting, how do you stop that shooter? You call the police with guns to come to the school and take out the shooter before they can continue taking out kids, right? So yes, the solution to stopping someone from shooting up a school is to have a gun in the school to stop them. But you're making the argument that it's okay to have more guns in school after a shooter has already started murdering children by calling the police in after the fact, instead of having one gun in school by someone who's trained to use it prior to the school shooter showing up, so that the children have at least a chance of defense prior to being shot. It's not a solution to fixing why we have people in society that are even able to shoot a bunch of children. But until we can figure that problem out, at least this would give children a chance at some sort of protection prior to being shot. Because right now they're just sitting duck. So until we can groom society and to stop killing a bunch of children, we should be protecting them. An armed security guard, just one in each school, as just a front line of defense. They don't have to wear uniforms and sling weapons over the shoulder. Just khaki, sports coat, concealed, and their only job is to sit there and watch YouTube all day. And every person that walks up, if they notice someone that walks up with a gun, they are the first line of defense. At least it gives the kids a chance to not be slaughtered that day. But that's just one idea. And now this shooting kind of goes a little deeper, because instead of the shooter being blamed for just being crazy and wanting to kill a bunch of innocent people, the gun is blamed, number one. And the next blame is then placed on transgenderism. So now you've got a large swath of people who are saying transgenderism is what leads to these kind of shootings, because in all of these mass shootings and school shootings that we've had, there's quite a few of them that have been from someone who is transgender. Some have taken it even further. The transgender shooter in this case is also a victim of the ones that he shot, Christianity. So now Christianity could be leading to this. I'm not trying to go down rabbit holes of these conspiracy theories. My point is, why is the blame so often taken away from the person committing the crime? Why do we have to find something else to blame other than the person committing the crime themselves? The fix to all this is work that no one wants to do. So it's easier to blame the guns. It's easier to go after what they consider the low-hanging fruit instead of do the real work, which is trying to figure out why we have more and more people in our society every decade or so that are willing to take a bunch of innocent lives. That's how you stop mass shootings. That's how you stop school shootings. What is causing people to have that in them? Like I could never have that in me, to walk into a school and shoot a bunch of children. I can't even fathom someone being able to do that. But more and more people are devaluing other human beings' lives. Why? How do we raise the next generation to value human life, to not have that in them? These weapons have existed for hundreds of years. We've never seen the amount of mass shootings as we have in the last 10, 15 years. Why? It's something deeper than just, it's the guns. It's deeper than just transgenderism is a mental illness. Those are all cop-outs in trying to fix the actual issue, in my opinion. I don't have the answer. I don't know how we get people to value lives enough to not walk into a school and shoot a bunch of children. I don't know if religion is the answer, if anti-religion is the answer. I don't know. But signing a piece of paper that says this particular gun is no longer allowed in society is not going to fix it. Because as I discussed in episode 6 of the podcast, laws are not preventative, they're just reactionary. If laws were preventative, there would never be any murder because murder is banned. The fact that murder is banned doesn't actively stop people from murdering, it just punishes them after they do it. So if you signed a ban tomorrow saying all guns in society are banned, no one is allowed to have a gun of any kind, you won't know someone's violating that ban until they pull the trigger. And at that point, there's already a victim. Someone is either hurt or dead. So it doesn't actually save anyone. It just punishes the person after the fact. Just like I said, the most comprehensive gun laws in 30 years, bragged about in Congress, was passed in 2022. And since then, we've had more school and mass shootings in a 3-year period than we ever have. Because your laws on paper don't work. And when it comes to the transgenderism thing, a lot of people on the right are using this incident now to say, see, transgenderism is a mental illness. Now, we've seen the debate on transgenderism get bigger and bigger over the last 10 years as transgenders become more part of our society. We've had the debate on transgender women in women's sports, in sharing locker rooms in schools and all that stuff. And we can talk about that as a whole, transgenderism as a whole, another podcast episode. But in related to this shooting, it's given people on the right a little bit more fire, because in this person's manifesto, he said he wished he never brainwashed himself into being a transgender. And they're using that as kind of proof that transgenderism leads to this kind of mental illness that would allow someone to be able to take the life of someone else. Once you devalue your own life, there's no limit to what you could do to someone else. What's interesting about this guy's manifesto that he wishes he never brainwashed himself, and I'm kind of digressing here, but he wishes he never brainwashed himself into believing he was transgender. But a child can't brainwash themselves. A child is easily groomed. Why do you think they believe in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny? Religion. Religion is groomed into a child. A child can't brainwash themselves. It's like if my 5-year-old believed he was Spider-Man, like truly believed he was Spider-Man, it would be my job to make sure he understands he's not actually Spider-Man, right? It would be my job to make sure that he is not able to brainwash himself into believing that he is Spider-Man. And I'll tell you what, if my son came to me right now and said, Dad, I'm Spider-Man. I'm like, oh, you like Spider-Man? He goes, no, I am Spider-Man. You know what? I would let him wear a Spider-Man costume. I would take pictures of him. I would start a news website with sightings of Spider-Man, just like on the movie, and pretend that we work for this news station. We're taking pictures of him, putting up sighting of Spider-Man. I would call him Spidey. I would let him dress however he wants. I'd refer to him in any way he wants me to. Spider-Man, Peter, Spidey, whatever. But the second he says, hey, Dad, I need to get on the roof. Why, son? Why do you need to get on the roof? Because I'm going to jump off the roof and shoot a web out of my arm across to the tree and then swing across the air because I'm Spider-Man. That's when I'm going to make sure he understands he's not actually Spider-Man. He can be as close to Spider-Man as he wants to be. He can live his life how he wants to live, but I can't let him do something that's going to put his life at risk when it's simply not true. You're not Spider-Man. So he'll never be able to brainwash himself into believing he is actually Spider-Man because as a parent, I won't let him do that. So when this shooter said that he can't believe he brainwashed himself into believing he was trans, that's the fault of the parents to me. But it's not the fault of transgenderism in general. And it's not the fault of the parents that this dude decided to pick up a weapon and shoot a bunch of innocent children. The only one that's at fault for that is the shooter himself. Even if you believe transgenderism is some sort of mental illness, you can have a mental illness and still know that you're not supposed to shoot up a bunch of people. You can have a mental illness and still not have it in you to take away the lives of innocent children. There's many people in our society who have clinically diagnosed mental illnesses that aren't going around shooting up a bunch of people. So I don't agree with half of society who says the problem with these shootings is mental illness. This is a mental illness problem. It's too general for me because that's how you get into twisting. This is now a transgender problem. If you say shooting up a school is a sign of mental illness, and then you say transgenderism is a sign of mental illness, now you're making the argument that transgenderism leads to a lack of safety in society as your way of trying to stomp out transgenderism. It's too rhetorically extreme for me because those two things are completely different. There's plenty of people who have transitioned from male to female or female to male that aren't going to go into a school and shoot up a bunch of kids. Just like there are a bunch of people that own a bunch of semi-automatic and automatic rifles that are never going to go into a school and shoot up a bunch of people. So that's too much. It's too broad of an argument, and it's too easy to then twist other things to fit that argument. For example, we all agree that if you walk around the street and you punch someone in the face, that's called assault. However, if you were walking down the street and you saw someone that was a 1940s German Nazi and they were being racist or whatever, and you punch them in the face because they're a Nazi, everyone in society would agree that that's not assault. You see a Nazi, you should be able to punch a Nazi in the face, right? Then you justify going after people who are different than you by labeling them a Nazi. Does that make sense? You can't walk around punching people, dude. That's assault. Well, that was a Nazi. Oh, it's okay. It's okay to punch a Nazi. We all agree. It's okay to punch a Nazi. Oh, that guy's got a MAGA hat on. He's a Nazi. Therefore, it's okay for me to punch him. Do you see what I mean? Do you see the line that's drawn there? So the same thing is being done now with mental illness. On one hand, I agree with you. You must have some screws loose in your head if you even have the ability to walk into a school and shoot a bunch of innocent children. You must be crazy. But you can't say the answer is mental illness because then that can lead to then anyone you don't like or any kind of demographic of people or any kind of group of people that you want to go after and justify yourself for going after them, you can claim they have a mental illness. Therefore, we need to eradicate that mental illness. Do you see what I'm getting at? If you say mental illness is what causes people to shoot up a school, and then you associate people who are transgender with having a mental illness, you're associating people who are transgender with going into a school and shooting up a bunch of children. And then it just adds fuel to that fire when this shooter happens to also be transgender. And in all the mass shootings that have happened over the last 15, 20 years, there have been transgender shooters, of course. There have also been white shooters and black shooters and male shooters and female shooters. That doesn't mean that everyone who is transgender should be treated as a threat to being a mass shooter. The broad stroking that we all complain about when one side does it, but then we do it ourselves, that type of stuff needs to stop. So that's too broad of a kind of solution or reason for these things happening. And that goes back to my original point. Why can't we just punish the crime, not the freedom? The only one responsible for shooting up these children in Minneapolis is the shooter himself. It's not the tool's fault, which is the gun. It's not transgenderism that's the fault. It's not Christianity that's the fault. Christianity was talked about through all this too. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, because the people who are able to talk about this are really, really good at convincing you on these things. So there's a couple arguments I've heard that the problem are Democrats because of the rhetoric against Christianity that they put out. Just this idea that the left attacking Christianity or doing the broad stroking thing that I just talked about. So like when a priest rapes a young boy, broad stroking all of Christianity, or when someone who happens to be evangelical says something racist, then saying that Christianity, religions across this country promote this kind of racism. Like that broad stroking leads to broad stroking the other way around. So now you have people on the right who are saying that it's the overall rhetoric against Christianity, the broad stroking that's done against Christianity, that is leading people to go into church schools to shoot up kids now. Specifically, transgenders who feel like one of their biggest oppressors is Christianity. And none of this leads to any kind of solutions. So these arguments don't work for me when they're highly rhetorical and they're very, very broad. Just way too broad. If we just sign pieces of paper saying guns are banned, these will stop. No, they won't. If we just say that the problem is mental illness and we attack mental illness somehow, no one ever has a solution to how we fix mental illness. But then somehow these shootings will stop. The debates on this stuff, it's just too broad and it's too rhetorical. And it's to drum up emotions, and it causes too much debate instead of trying to figure out a solution to end these things. So back to the gun debate. My personal feeling, like I said, I know not everyone feels this way. Banning weapons won't work. There's no way to remove weapons from society. There's a huge difference between signing a piece of paper that says AR-15s are banned and getting all the AR-15s off the street. There's no logical way to actually do that. You won't know someone's violating that AR-15 ban until they walk into a school and shoot up a bunch of kids. And at that point, that didn't save anyone. That didn't stop the shooting from happening. Now, on top of being charged for multiple murders, they're going to get another charge for violating the AR-15 ban. So my personal view is signing more gun laws is not what fixes this. I don't know what fixes this, other than the fact that we have more and more people nowadays that are just devalue life. That has to be the only real answer. But signing a gun ban is not going to do anything. As a matter of fact, I'd be willing to prove it. So here's another argument that we want to get into, because on the right, they'll say that, no, we can't take the right to own a gun away, because one of the points of being able to keep and bear arms is the fact that it allows the citizenry to defend themselves against a tyrannical government. And at the time, in the 1700s, that made a lot of sense. At the time, you had half the country that believed in the British Parliament rule, and you had another half of the country that believed in starting their own government and getting out of the British Parliament rule. And when you have those kind of differences in the system of government that should be ran, not only do you risk a tyrannical government, but you risk tyranny between yourself and half of the population. Like the tyranny risk is between the population themselves, because you'll have the half of the population that believes they should be under British rule believes that the other half who wants to have their own country are tyrants. And then you have the half of the people that want to have their own country and be out of British rule believes that it's the British rule and the other half of the citizenry that are the tyrants. So back in those times, it makes sense to say everyone should own a gun to defend themselves against a tyrannical government, because everyone thought the government was tyrannical in some way. As a matter of fact, if the Brits would have won the Revolutionary War, they might have also added rules through their parliament saying that everyone in the colonies should own a gun to be able to protect themselves against other citizens who want to start their own form of tyrannical government against the British Empire. So my point is saying that is at the time that the Constitution was written, the idea of everyone owning a gun to protect themselves against a tyrannical government made sense. But I don't believe that in 2025, with how mature our society has gotten within our constitutional republic, that we need to arm ourselves to the teeth with the intent of protecting ourselves from a tyrannical government. The government's not going to be able to take over and ruin our constitutional republic and turn it into a dictatorship or authoritarian rule. I think we're past that now. We're too far into our current government makeup that's not going to happen. And what's funny to me is people who are against everyone in society owning these types of weapons will be the first ones to tell you that Trump is trying to become a dictator, an authoritarian. He's trying to make it so he doesn't leave the White House in 2029. So you would think people that truly hate Trump and believe that he's trying to take over as king of the USA would be calling for everyone to own AR-15s to be able to stop him from doing that. But I don't believe that's going to happen at this point in our society. In the 1700s, it made sense, but now it doesn't. However, I do believe in the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms for an individual to protect themselves from other individuals. I don't believe we have to worry about going to war with our own government, but I do have to worry about having a daughter who is in college right now, getting into the medical field, and one day is going to be working till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And when she's walking out to her car, she is at risk by any adult male that wants to do her any kind of harm, and she should be allowed to have a weapon to protect herself. She doesn't have to, she doesn't want to, but if she wants to and she trains on it, she should be allowed to carry to protect herself from someone who might want to do her harm. So I believe in the right to keep and bear arms for individual protection and safety. And I don't believe telling someone what they should be comfortable with as far as a weapon for safety is the right way to go. Because some people will say, yes, that's why we're saying handguns are okay, but you don't need an AR-15. What's wrong with an AR-15? This is where I get back to what I was saying earlier. Why aren't we punishing the crime? Why isn't the focus punish the crime, not the freedom? It doesn't matter what gun I own. It doesn't matter what gun my daughter owns, because I'm not going to walk into a school and shoot up a bunch of kids. My daughter's not going to walk into a school and shoot up a bunch of kids. If I feel the best gun for me for personal protection is an AR-15, then I should be allowed to own an AR-15. And I should be allowed to continue to own an AR-15 as long as I am being responsible and not putting myself or anyone else at risk with that AR-15. Because otherwise, what you do when you ban weapons like that is you're gonna end up criminalizing the people that you're not intending to go after by having these bans. The point of these bans would be to stop someone like the shooter in Minneapolis from going into the school and shooting up a bunch of kids. But you're not going to be able to stop that. You're not going to be able to stop someone from committing a lower offense when a higher offense is already banned and they're going to do that higher offense anyway. So walking into a school and murdering people is already banned. So someone who's willing to do that is not going to follow the gun ban while they do that. So you won't know someone who's going to murder is using an AR-15 until they pull the trigger. Whereas, if you said right now AR-15s are completely banned, there are plenty of people who have never and would never walk into a school and shoot up a bunch of people, who would never violate the murder ban, that have AR-15s. And if they don't give those guns up and it's found out, maybe a neighbor calls the police one day and says, I believe he has AR-15s in there and those are banned, he shouldn't have those, you're going to end up sending police to his or her door to harass them about the AR-15s that they have and possibly land them in jail and ruin their life when they're not the ones who are a threat to these children in the schools. So the ones that will get punished the most are not the ones that we're trying to punish for having these thoughts of shooting up schools. If the goal is to stop school shootings, more laws on paper are not going to do that. But like I said, to prove it, let's sign a law tomorrow. All guns in society are banned. But I'm going to ask everyone who's listening to this a question. If you want that law to be passed, would you be willing to sign a piece of paper that says, and if this new legislation banning all guns doesn't stop school shootings, then we'll finally admit that these gun laws aren't working and the gun law can be rescinded. Would you be willing to do that? Would you be willing to sign a piece of paper that says, if I vote in support for the idea of banning guns in society, because my argument on social media and everyone I talk to is that if you want children to stop being shot up in schools, you'll support banning guns. Would you be willing to sign a piece of paper that says, I support this. Let's remove all guns from society because I care about the children. I don't want them shot up in school anymore. And I'm not willing to listen to any other potential solution for stopping school shootings. The only thing I'm willing to listen to is banning guns, right? And the piece of paper says, however, if school shootings continue after we ban guns from society, then you'll go to jail for those kids being shot up. Would you be willing to do that? Would you be willing to put your freedom on the line to believe that signing a piece of paper into law will stop these school shootings from happening? And I'm sorry if that upsets you. More gun laws are not going to work. It's already against the law to shoot people, and people do it all the time. So that's why if you ever see me on social media and these things come up and we have these discussions, I'm the one arguing against banning guns because of all this. It's not because I don't care about children, but it's because no matter how many more gun laws we just have more and more school shootings. At what point are we going to say, maybe we need to try something else to stop these kids from getting slaughtered in school? Maybe doing more of the same thing and expecting a different result is actually making it worse. Because now, every time we go around this same circle of passing more gun laws and then them not working, more people are dying. There's got to be another way to keep kids safe from lunatics who decide they're going to shoot up a school. Okay, let's move on to another big thing that's been happening over the last couple weeks with Gavin Newsome. What he's doing, I think, is going to push him right through the primaries in 2028. It won't even be close. He's going to win the Democrat ticket easily. And then I think it's actually going to push him right into the White House in 2029. I think he will be able to win the general election. And I think the Democrat is going to win the general election anyway. And I'll get into that in a second. If you're not on X, then you're not seeing how deep Gavin Newsom has gone into mocking Trump. And it's bringing him more popularity than he's ever had on social media up to this point. And this is why I think it's going to propel him right into the White House in 2029, because he's becoming Trump in a sense to win the same way Trump did. So if you're not on X, when an account gets big on X, or when it's someone that's already well known, like especially a political figure like AOC or Elizabeth Warren or JD Vance or whatever, what happens is when you become a big account on X, you start to get parody accounts created in your likeness. And it's a good sign that you're doing something well on that platform because enough people know you and follow you to create something like this. And usually what these are, they're usually parody accounts, or like they're like quote quote press release accounts. Or like there's a fan account of AOC. It's called AOC Press Release. Anything AOC does, they put out a tweet about it, usually in a parody way. And then there's ones that are not parodies, they're just strictly fan accounts. Like what's her name? Taylor Swift gets a lot of these, where just fans will just like post like Taylor Swift went to the grocery store today or something like that. And it gets millions of views and all that stuff. Well, there's an account out there called Governor Newsom Press Office. And I don't know if Governor Newsom knew who these people were before, because apparently there's two of them that run this account, but I'm sure he does now. I'm not sure that they are actually a part of his PR team, but they're going to be by 2028. Because what they started doing a couple weeks ago is they decided to start putting out tweets that sound and look exactly as Trump would put out. So all capital letters, bad grammar, things like you want to thank Governor Newsom for that, even if it wasn't directly Governor Newsom that is responsible for that. Putting stuff in parentheses like, the greatest governor in America and stuff like that. Just being Trump in the way that Trump tweets. And it's absolutely blown up. Now, Gavin Newsom was already famous being the governor of California, but even his own tweets would have a couple 100,000 views and likes and retweets and all that stuff. But this parody account or this newsroom office account started getting tens of millions of views. I mean, everything they would post mimicking Donald Trump on behalf of Governor Gavin Newsom has just went viral. And it got to a point where Newsom himself just started retweeting it all. And it's brought the viewership to his own X account through the roof. So this has gained Gavin a lot of support across the country, especially on social media. He's getting a lot more supporters and followers now. And what's funny is his supporters are swearing that this is not the real Gavin, right? Gavin is very educated and classy and very well spoken and very experienced and very presidential. This is just Gavin having fun mocking Trump and the MAGA crowd. And what started as his new supporters saying that this is him mocking Trump to show how ridiculous it is, has now moved into this is so hilarious because the MAGA crowd are so dumb. They don't realize they're being mocked through all this. And now he's just doing it to trigger the MAGA crowd. But it's not really him. He's super presidential. Well, when Trump is being politically incorrect and tossing insults out, putting in parentheses with everything he says, your favorite president, stuff like that, what is it that the MAGA crowd likes about it? It, quote, quote, triggers the libs, right? So this is the same exact thing. Gavin is literally becoming Trump in order to gain in popularity the same way Trump did in 2016. So it sets him apart from the other Democrat candidates in the 2028 primary. Because all of them are going to be classy. All of them are going to be presidential. All of them are going to have the same progressive ideas. So what's going to set him apart from the rest of the candidates in the primary? He's able to mock Trump in a way that triggers MAGA. So call it what you want. Call it mocking, call it triggering. It's still the same thing, and it's going to work. He is doing what Trump did in 2016 so he can get on the ticket and blow right through the election on 2028. And I'm going to digress a little bit here. Back in 2016, the Democrat Party, and I don't mean voters who vote Democrat, I mean the elected official party itself, 100% knew that a Democrat was not going to win the White House. They knew that. They were conceding that election altogether. And that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, no young up-and-coming Democrat was going to be able to follow Obama. If you voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012, you absolutely loved Obama as president. Anything that a Democrat president would have done in 2016, had they won, would have been compared to everything Obama did. That's not good for the party overall. No one was going to be able to follow in his footsteps. And it's not good for Obama's legacy to have the next president do anything great that's then compared negatively to Obama. But also, they knew they were going to lose because if you look at history, once you have the White House for 2 terms, that party doesn't win the White House again. It was always going to be a Republican that won in 2016. The strategy from the beginning was conceding 2016 and then doing everything we can to paint that Republican president that followed Obama as terrible. So in 2020, we can run a candidate that will help us get back to the Obama years. And it's a good strategy. But things like the Russia collusion thing and Russia meddling in our election, we all know that Russia meddles in the election. But the claim that he essentially colluded with or worked with a foreign government in order to rig the election, that's what the collusion claim was, that would have been applied to whoever won the Republican primary because they knew whoever won that primary in 2016 was going to be president. So if it was Ted Cruz, for example, the whole Russia collusion thing would have been painted onto Ted Cruz. It's just strategy for the next upcoming election. And you can tell that they conceded 2016 if you let me digress a little bit more and go back all the way to the early 2000s. In the early 2000s, the Democrat Party, as a party, changed their entire campaign strategy. They took a huge dive into identity politics. So it wasn't just the black vote, Hispanic vote. It wasn't just based on race anymore. They decided to split everyone up into groups and then start considering certain groups to be marginalized. And then the fault of that marginalization is not the government or the Constitution or institutional issue that can be voted against. What was marginalizing the groups that were labeled as being marginalized were fellow citizen groups that weren't labeled as being marginalized. So they split everyone into different groups, whether it's socioeconomic groups, gender or sexuality groups, racial groups, etc., age groups. And then they pitted those groups against each other, right? If you are in the middle or lower economic class and you are struggling financially, it's because of the fellow citizens of yours that are in the upper economic class. They are the ones holding you back. They are the problem. And so they did this in order to campaign essentially for 2008. They did this through the entire Bush administration. And the one sentence that kind of summed up their entire campaign strategy was that the problem with our country today is old, out of touch, rich white people, right? That was the general direction that the Democrat Party wanted to go in the early 2000s. We wanted to get away from old, out of touch, rich white people. And they hit the nail on the head perfectly with Obama. He was young, more in tune with the younger crowd and what was popular at the time. He's super rich now, but at the time he was not super rich. He's not white. It was exactly what the Democrat Party wanted. Now fast forward back to 2016 when they knew they were going to lose the election. Why would they, after spending all of the early 2000s saying that the problem with this country is old, rich, white people, getting Obama elected for 8 years, why would they go back to then running 2 old, rich, white people in 2016? Because they knew they were going to lose the election. The problem is they didn't think it would be Donald Trump who won the primary. That's when they panicked. Donald Trump is an outsider. Donald Trump was a cog to the system. They thought someone like Ted Cruz was going to win, and at least at the time he was an establishment Republican. They can deal with that for 4 years, kind of tarnish the whole Republican Party through him to try to get ready for 2020 to get an Obama-like candidate back into the White House in 2020. That was always the plan. Trump was not expected. And if you remember, during the 2016 election season, no one believed Donald Trump was going to be president. Everyone laughed. Every time someone said, do you think Donald Trump's going to win the primaries? Everyone would laugh. Republicans would laugh. Democrats would laugh. I mean, we all thought it was a bit. He wasn't like some politician that was now it's his turn to run for president. He was a real estate guy and he was a movie star. And the last thing any of us even knew about Donald Trump in like a public setting was The Apprentice. You fired, right? He was like the Simon Cowell of The Apprentice. And what made Simon Cowell so famous on American Idol? How politically incorrect and blunt he was, even if it was being mean to everyone who got up and sang. It was the same reason why The Apprentice did so well. People didn't watch The Apprentice to see if someone succeeded in what they were doing. They watched it to see how Donald Trump would lay into them. So, sorry for that digression, but let's stick with 2016 really quick. Why did Donald Trump win in 2016? Did he offer any new political ideas? Any new policy ideas? I mean, you got to think the entire Democrat Party was also moving towards this progressive ideology. So let's not just take policies of the past that's worked. Let's fundamentally change how we do things here in America. Let's be more progressive. Let's think of things that we haven't thought of before. And Donald Trump wasn't bringing that to the table. Donald Trump was essentially quoting and taking a lot of what Reagan did. He wasn't even following Bush from 2000 to 2008. He was going all the way back to Reagan, was kind of his political stance. Now, part of that strategy, because when Reagan was president, everyone loved Reagan. Or at least when he was running for president, he won, 49 states, 48 states, something like that. So it's a good strategy, especially if you've never been in politics before. Like, what am I running on? Just be Reagan 2.0. But no one believed it was serious. In the primaries, at least, we all thought it was a bit, right? Here's this movie star just having fun saying he's going to run for president. Now he's actually pretty conservative because that's what his voting base is. So he's had to cater to them. But honestly, prior to 2016, he was never really a conservative or Republican. So anyway, but why did he win in 2016? He didn't win because he had some new progressive policy ideas. He didn't win because he'd gone to Harvard and got 15 new degrees. He didn't win because he worked for the last 30 years in all these different federal agencies and he's well-rounded on all of these policies. Why did he win in 2016? Because he was different, because he was rude, because he said whatever was on his mind, regardless of who it offended. He did not give any care to being politically correct about anything. He told people exactly how he felt about them. He told the media exactly how he felt about them. He did not hold back. And I think it resonated with a lot of people. Even if they disagree with him from a policy or ideological perspective, this idea that there is a candidate being human and just saying what he feels, the things that we all think he's just able to say. He wasn't playing this like speaking in rhetoric to sound profound and everything is a practice rehearsed one-liner and stuff like that, especially like at the debates and opening statements and all this other stuff. It wasn't fake. It all comes off as fake when these politicians do that. And how many times have you watched politicians give a public speech or at the debate? You're like, why do they just say what you're thinking, right? So that's what Donald Trump did in 2016, and it worked. And he took it even further because instead of just saying how he felt, he really threw political correctness out the window because he just said it in the most insulting and rude way, if that's what came to his mind, without any care at all. Like Ted Cruz would be like, Donald Trump doesn't know anything about foreign policy. That's why you should vote for me. And Donald Trump's like, oh yeah, well his wife's ugly. Like it made people laugh. It was rude as hell, and everyone would agree to that. It just made him seem just like a regular faulted human being. And for whatever reason, we gravitate to that, especially today in social media. Because someone like me who tries to talk about things and debate things from a middle view and understand perspectives on both sides, on social media, if you want your account to grow, if you want to go viral instantly, you've got to pick a side, go head first all in with a middle finger to the other side in every single post that you do. So people gravitate to that. Plus, they think it's funny. Plus, they think it's a boom. Someone said it. I'm glad someone did. And that's why Trump won the primaries. He wasn't the same old rhetorical political candidate. The counter to that has been Democrat politicians trying to be even more politically correct, even more sounding like they're writing a poem instead of just giving a statement, while still playing off of everyone's emotions. It's just gotten so much into the what sounds more like a leader. And it's just kind of funny to me because I'm like, that was a great speech that XYZ person gave, but it's just words. It's not action. Say whatever you want. I don't care how profound it sounds. But how something is said, how it's typed, how it's written, has for some reason been a big priority to the Democrat Party since Trump has been president. And mainly that's because they are countering everything Trump. So Gavin Newsom was already pretty famous as is. I don't think there's a Democrat in the country that would say, I would rather have Trump as president than Gavin Newsom. In general, they see Gavin Newsom as obviously younger. They see him as more in touch. They see him as better politically. They see him as way better spoken and presents himself a lot better with a lot more class and a lot more presidential than Trump does. I would assume 99.9% of all Democrats would say that about Gavin Newsom versus Donald Trump. However, no one ever believed Gavin Newsom could actually have a shot to be president. And usually that's because as well-spoken as people think he is, as much of a great governor Democrats think he is for California, there's still a large swath of Democrats in this country that will vote for anyone other than Trump. However, in the primaries, would prefer not to California the rest of the states. There's a lot that California does that people like, but overall in general, there's still this kind of like stigma, like, don't California or Iowa or whatever the case. But now those people are going to be excited to vote for him. Why? Because he's doing what Trump did in 2016, which is throwing political correctness out of the window, just saying what you truly feel, not worrying about sounding immature or unclassy, just spitting it all out, and people flock to that. He's also doing things like selling merchandise, putting out memes like Trump does, with Trump in a Superman thing or with a crown on his head. Gavin Newsom's doing the same thing, and everyone is loving it. And for the worry that some people of his own party are going to say, this is kind of childish, he's saying, that's the point. I'm mocking Trump. I'm showing just how childish Trump is with all this stuff. Just to show how ridiculous it is that Trump is selling gold shoes, I'm going to go ahead and sell gold shoes too. So he's trying to save face for the few people that really care about that stuff, like how classy this looks and how professional this looks and how presidential this looks. For the few people that truly care about that, that's Gavin Newsom's excuse. No. That's not me, guys. I'm well-spoken. I am classy. I am highly educated. This is just mocking Trump. I'm doing all this to make fun of the MAGA bros. But again, mocking Trump or not, it's working. Because for the blue-collar voters and for the people who dislike Trump and want to have a candidate to truly rally behind, they love this. In every interview Gavin Newsom's in now, and every podcast he shows up on or whatever, where he talks about this and how he's just making fun of Trump, he's cursing. He's insulting Trump. I mean, he's insulting how he looks. He's insulting his age, his fat cankles or whatever. He is stooping to that level because what it's doing is giving him more virality and more popularity than he's ever had, even just as governor of California. So even if he started this as just mocking Trump or just mocking, he's going to continue to do it. Do you know he even started a meme coin? It's like the Trump, I can't even remember the name of it now. It's like the Trump is retarded coin or something like that. And the MAGA people still don't get it. He's just making fun of them. They just don't get it. Doesn't matter if he's making fun of them or not. He's actually selling the coin and he's making campaign funding doing so. You can call it mocking. You can call it mimicking. You can call it a copycat. Doesn't matter what you call it. The fact is he's doing what Trump did in 2016 and it's going to get him elected. Now, the reason why I think it's going to get him elected is because doing this is what's going to win him the primary. And I think whatever Democrat wins the primary in 2028 is going to win the general election in November of 2028. Now, why do I say that? Now, that goes back to 2016 as well. In 2016, the Democrats knew that whichever Republican won the primary was going to win the general election because we just had 2 terms with a Democrat president. And history tells you that once that happens, the opposing party wins the next term. But what I also predicted in 2016, which seems to be holding true so far, is that we were going to go through a series of single-term presidents for a while. And that was just due to the divide on a national level between Democrats and Republicans. And this all kind of started even back in the Bush administration. If you've noticed, and I've mentioned this little snippet in previous episodes before, but no president ever has the control of Congress, both the Senate and the House, for more than 2 years of the presidency. And there's a reason for that. That's a product of our deep divide. And because of that, a president can't get anything done, essentially. They can get one major thing done in their term. And if they end up with a second term, it's usually a split Congress and things get kind of stalled. And so I felt with the divide in 2016 and then with Trump winning, an outsider winning like that, I did not believe that people would be able to handle an outsider like that and that it would lead to them not being able to win a second consecutive term. And then I felt that countering to that, to beat the outsider who just got elected, you would have to go to even further extremes on the other end, which would drum up more voters and more people willing to get out and vote so they can flip it back. And that we were going to go through a series of that one-term presidencies, switching every 4 years, for quite some time. And I think we're still going to have that all the way through 2036. I think it'll be a 20-year period where we have a single-term president. And of course, I was right. In 2020, Biden won to the tune of 81 million votes he won. And then, of course, this time now we're back to Trump. It flipped again. And so I think the Democrat is going to win in 2028. And that's why I think what Gavin Newsome is doing is smart. And it's very important because he knows right now whoever wins the primary in 2028 is going to win the general election in 2028. And it started looking like AOC and Bernie were going to kind of take hold of the Democrat Party. And then just this one fake account, like I said, I don't even know if they even had met Gavin Newsom prior to this, just decided as a way of being funny to copy Trump. Gavin Newsom started parroting it, and it's turned into an entire thing. And he's the most popular Democrat across the country right now. And it's all because of that. And I don't think he's going to let up. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, Democrat voters already feel that whoever the Democrat candidate is already better, is more well-spoken, is more educated, is more experienced. So that's not going to put anyone over the edge. But Gavin Newsom, while trying to keep this persona of being charismatic and well-educated and very well-experienced and very well-spoken and classy and presidential, is also able to stoop to the level of Trump in order to go against MAGA, essentially. To take the fight to MAGA, to give MAGA a piece of their own medicine. And that's going to carry him over the top, I think, in the primaries in 2028, if he continues it. If he backs down, I think another Democrat candidate is going to fill that void and copy him and do what he did. If they do that now while he's still in the running before he backs down, then they're just copying him and it's not going to get them anywhere. And I think Gavin Newsom is smart, and I think the party is smart, and they are going to continue to ride this all the way to the primaries. Mark my words. If he continues this quote, quote, just mocking of Trump, he will win the primaries. So I'd like to know what you guys think about it, taking everything I said. I also want to know what you have to say about the gun debate. I want to hear it. I'd love to maybe get someone with an opposing view here on the show, and we can bounce these debates back and forth. But you can comment or email me at eric.middleviewmedia@gmail.com. That's eric.middleviewmedia@gmail.com. And I will try to address your comments or your concerns or your debates in the follow-on episodes. That's all for this episode. Please like, subscribe, follow, share, all of that stuff. Again, it costs you nothing, really helps me out. I'll see you guys on episode 8. Don't forget to reach out to me or comment below if you want to discuss anything else. And other than that, 5 head out.